everybody, as promised, I'm here today to give you a bit of an overview about Assessment 1.2. I'll apologise straight up, I've got a bit of a cold and you can see my face is quite red and I'm a bit snuffly, so I hope we'll be okay. Yes, it's one of those nasty colds that just won't go away. Okay, so I'm here to talk about some guidance for your assessment around the IPC Board of Directors presentation. So the purpose of this assessment is for you to think really laterally about the presentation for the Board of Directors. I sit on a couple of health boards, and at our monthly meetings we often have a member of staff do a presentation just like this to inform our governance roles. And that could be around our financial governance, our clinical governance or our community governance. So you're expected to have a bit of a sense of what a Board of Directors actually does. So in this presentation I'm going to give you three important tips really. So the first one is that you need to brief the Board of Directors of IPC. So it's really important for you to know the audience. Check out the rubric that sits alongside this assessment and you'll realise that it's not just an exercise in summarising the Swearison and Duckett report. Obviously you need to read that and make some notes for yourself. But one of the most important things about this assessment is that you need to tailor it to the audience, and your audience in this case is the Board of Directors of IPC. So some of the main things you might want to think about is, what does the Board of Directors do? What are their main roles and responsibilities? It's important to think about the types of information that would be important for them when they're making decisions about, for example, what might be funded, or where they're going to put their energies for the next quarter or something along those lines. So the role of the board is to actually set the strategic directions for the organisation. And of course all community health organisations have a CEO, and the role of the CEO is to report to the board. And the board then actually employs the CEO, if you like. So if I was you, I'd begin by doing some Google searches around what is the role of the board, just so that you're super clear about what sort of information the board might be interested in. I'd also suggest that you currently have a look at who currently sits on the board of IPC. You can go into the IPC website and you can have a look at the section called About Us. There's some information there about who the people are, what their background is, and you can read a little bit about the different directors, just so that you're super clear about who the audience is and where to pitch your presentation. You can have a look at the IPC website, and I've given you the URL address within the video notes that accompany this video. You'll see when you have a look at the About Us section of the IPC website is that the board here has a range of different skills, and not all of them have a health background. Think about what that might mean to you and how you might tailor the presentation to suit the people who may have different skill sets. The second thing that you should think about with this assessment is that the Swearison and Duckett report that you've been asked to read provides really broad information about chronic conditions and self-management. The board of IPC would be focused on their own communities, and rightly so. So you need to think about how you might contextualise the information for IPC boards so that it's relevant to the activities that they are undertaking. And you can certainly have a look at that information by checking out their website. Things like, where is it located? What are the demographics of the communities that they serve? There is extensive data available at the local community level, both on their websites and a whole range of others. And I've given you some links in the notes that accompany this video that you can have a look at. So a good place to start might be some of those geographical profiles that are available from places like the Victorian State Government. And there's some really, really useful information in those. There's also an excellent website that's called Community Indicators that gives you an overview with a whole range of detailed community indicators for each community in Victoria. And you could search those by name or postcode, and you can actually build a community profile here. And when we on health boards and in community health, when we're starting to work with a new community, that's often where we start. IPC is one of the largest community health centres in Victoria, and they look after 3 LGAs, or local government areas as they're called. And those are the City of Wyndham, the City of Brimbank and the City of Hobsons Bay. And obviously each of those has a number of smaller suburbs. So it would be a really good place to start to have a look at the health and wellbeing data in one of those areas. And I think because IPC is so big, you might be better off to try and focus down to one of the smaller areas, i.e. one of the cities that I've just mentioned. There's a number of health and wellbeing reports for each of those areas that I've outlined, and you could look at perhaps something like the Brimbank Health and Wellbeing Report, the City of Wyndham's Health and Wellbeing Report. The Vic Health ones are also useful, and I have actually given you some links to those in the notes that accompany this video. What do the information in these sorts of reports tell you about some of the most likely chronic conditions in those priority areas for the board? You might want to use some of that information directly out of the health and wellbeing reports in your presentation. One of the things that I found useful when I had a look at some of those reports was that the City of Wyndham, I think it is, has the highest spending per capita on poker machines in the state. They've also got one of the highest numbers of languages spoken at home other than English, with around, I think it was around 52% of the population speaking a language other than English at home. And of course, you know, there are some implications for that for the board, and you can also have a look at some of the health and wellbeing data by going to places like the Australian Bureau of Stats, the Census website, or the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. On the ABS website, there's also a useful tool you can use called Quick Stats, where you can search by postcode. So you might want to focus on one of those areas that we spoke about by postcode that IPC looks after, so perhaps the City of Wyndham. Have a look at what data you can find there, and what would the board find most interesting in thinking about chronic conditions and self-management. I'd also suggest that you have a look at the primary health networks and the primary care partnerships, two other very important partners in community health, and see what sorts of information they might have on their websites, some of the main conditions that are prevalent in those areas, and some of the work that they might be doing. The last thing that I'd want you to have a look at is what is the current activity of IPC. You can get a lot of this information from their website. Things like, can you find their strategic plan? Have you had a look at it? What's in their quality of care report? Perhaps what's in their annual report? What sorts of services do they offer? Is there any evidence within the activity that you can see on their website of interprofessional practice happening? One of the key things in the Sverrisson and Duckett report is the importance of interprofessional practice. Is there any evidence on the IPC website or in what you can find about the information in the organisation around integrated services, for example? You might want to tailor your information to the board about key things that are directly related to the organisation. You won't be able to cover everything that's in that report, but you know, you need to think about some of the key messages that you might want to share with the board in your presentation. The scope of it is really up to you. I'll finish up now, and I'm going to do a second video that's about the actual presentation, a very short video about how you might best present the data, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.